What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we're going to really wrap up our coverage over Acts of Vengeance. Now remember, Acts of Vengeance was this massive crossover that was given to us by Marvel Comics in 1989 up to 1990. It was the way for us to see our heroes go up against characters they don't usually fight against. So Spider-Man fighting against Graviton, the Hulk fighting against Grey Gargoyle, and the list goes on. But it was a cool way to see our heroes go up against characters they don't usually fight against. Now, like I just said a moment ago, we're going to wrap up our coverage over Acts of Vengeance. Now, I do know our last video was labeled the finale of Acts of Vengeance. But you see, when it came to Spider-Man, he wasn't technically done when it came to Acts of Vengeance. And so he got an aftermath story arc that took place after the ending of the big crossover. Because in the middle of Acts of Vengeance, Peter Parker was able to gain cosmic abilities by being able to tap into an unknown source of energy. But that's the problem right there. We had no idea what kind of energy that he had tapped into. And so when it came to Acts of Vengeance, when it wrapped up, we're kind of left wondering, hey, what about Peter Parker? What about him being cosmic? Where is that story gonna go? And so we got 3 more chapters to kind of wrap up that story arc, but to also answer the big question: what kind of energy did he tap into? But on top of that, we do see Peter Parker going up against every single person that he had defeated in Acts of Vengeance. So getting into the opening pages for today's video, we actually pick up with Sebastian Shaw. Now remember, by this point in our X-Men coverage, by this point in Marvel Comics, Sebastian was no longer part of the Hellfire Club. But this man is still all about his money. And so currently we see him talking to a scientist about a new kind of sentinels, 3 new prototypes, and these are all being used for Project Nimrod, the perfect sentinel. They're trying to work their way up to that point. Now, when it comes to Sebastian, he wants to use the new kinds of sentinels on other mutants, but here is the big problem. You see, he knows that in the past, Spider-Man had fought alongside with the X-Men, and the word on the street is that Spider-Man now has cosmic abilities, and with those cosmic abilities, he will be able to protect the X-Men and other mutants from these new kind of sentinels. And so for Sebastian, he wants to know, where did Spider-Man get his powers from? Now, the scientist that he was talking to apparently knows that it came from Max Lubish. Well, the project that Max was working on might have gave Spider-Man his newfound powers. Now, I will explain more about Max here in a moment, but now you have Sebastian very intrigued to meet Max and to figure out how in the world he was able to give Spider-Man cosmic powers. But now we have to jump over to Peter Parker. Now, when it comes to Peter Parker, we currently see him trying to help out Mary Jane by practicing some lines for the next show that she is going to be in. You see, around this time in Marvel Comics, Peter Parker and Mary Jane were actually married. But here's the problem right now. Peter is unable to focus to help out Mary Jane because he's so concerned about his new cosmic abilities that he's not really able to focus on a lot of different things. Mary Jane, school, Aunt May, and the list goes on. And so you have MJ say, why don't you just go out there in the city and just swing around a tad bit to kind of help you clear your mind. And once your mind is clear, come back here and then maybe we'll be able to continue. But now we jump back over to Sebastian Shaw, and we see Sebastian being able to meet up with Max Lubish. Now, when it comes to Max, the reason why he's so important when it comes to the idea of Peter Parker having cosmic abilities is because him and Peter were working on a project together at the university that Peter Parker is currently attending. And you see, when it came to the project, the main goal was to be able to tap into an unknown source of energy, which they were able to do. But the problem was that energy then shot out of the machine and hit Peter Parker, which then gave him the ability to become cosmic. And so when it comes to Sebastian, he wants Max to make a new device to be able to take away the powers of cosmic away from Spider-Man. But now we have to jump over to Graviton. Now when it comes to Graviton, he fought against Peter Parker back in the first chapter for Spider-Man in Acts of Vengeance. Now he had actually defeated Spider-Man, and he was left to believe that he had killed off Spider-Man because he was hired to kill off Peter Parker. Except he didn't make sure that he had actually finish the job. And so Peter was able to get right back up. And so he got word that Spider-Man is still alive. And so his main goal is to find Spider-Man and to kill him off. Now, when it comes to Loki though, by this point in Acts of Vengeance, Loki was defeated by the Avengers. And so this man is about to leave the Earth for the time being. Except before he does leave, he has one more trick up his sleeve. And so he hits a button that releases some kind of energy that goes straight down to the Earth to cause a new kind of problem. And what could be that new kind of problem? Well, you see, that energy goes straight down to Sebastian's 3 new prototype sentinels and combine them together to make a tri-sentinel, a concept that most fans truly love thanks to Spider-Man comics. And so now this new version of a Sentinel is going to attack the city and most likely going to fight against Spider-Man. But now we jump over to Spider-Man and we see him just minding his business, swinging around, trying to clear his mind. But unfortunately, his spider sense goes off. Now, after he had gained the ability of Cosmic, it was able to warn him about anything happening in the city, not just nearby him, but possibly across the city. And so while he's out there just trying to mind his business, he was attacked by Graviton. Now, the last time these two characters had met, Graviton won, but Peter Parker did not have his cosmic abilities. But this time he does. And so he is able to one-shot Graviton to easily win. And it's kind of like, dang, Graviton, you got your butt whooped. But Peter Parker is now trying to move on with his day. Now, like I said earlier, when it came to Max Lubish and also Sebastian Shaw, they were working together to find a way to take away the powers of Cosmic away from Spider-Man, except they do the complete opposite. Instead, they give him the full power of Cosmic. And this is where everything comes together. You see, we kind of find out that Peter Parker had tapped into the Enigma Force, and this is really important. And here is the reason why. The Enigma Force is a huge amount of cosmic ability that has the ability to turn somebody into Captain Universe. But the only reason why you are chosen to hold onto that kind of power is when something big is about to happen near you, and you were chosen to protect the people of that area. And so that means if Spider-Man was able to become Captain Universe, that means something big is about to happen near him. And so the rest of this chapter is really more of Spider-Man going out of his way to fight against the tri-sentinel. Now, I actually did have a problem with this battle, and the reason why, because earlier, when it came to Spider-Man only having half the power of Cosmic in his hands and going up against characters like Magneto, that he was able to take down those guys very easily. But when it comes to the tri-sentinel, with the full power of Captain Universe in his hands, he is actually struggling. And so you have Peter Parker trying his best to take down the tri-sentinel, because right now that robot is trying to attack a nuclear plant. If it does go off, well, there goes New York and any other areas around New York. And so Peter Parker has no choice but to go ahead and use the full power of Captain Universe to actually take down the tri-sentinel. Now, when he does that, The day is saved. The robot is destroyed, but Spider-Man has now officially lost the powers of Cosmic, the powers of the Enigma Force. He is no longer Captain Universe. But this does not end his Act of Vengeance story arc just yet. There's still 2 more chapters. Now, the ending of the first chapter, I truly love it a lot, and here's the reason why. So you have Peter Parker and Mary Jane going out of their way to meet up with Flash Thompson. Now, in the earlier parts of our coverage over Spider-Man for Acts of Vengeance, I had talked about the idea of Flash having all these different kinds of girlfriends. Well, he has a new one, and except the new girlfriend is, somebody who is actually very close to Peter Parker, and that would be Felicia Hardy, aka the Black Cat, aka Peter Parker's ex-girlfriend. But now we have to jump over to Web of Spider-Man number 64. The final 2 chapters for Acts of Vengeance for Spider-Man is really more of him going up against the characters that he fought against earlier in the earlier chapters when he had the power of Cosmic, minus Magneto and another character. And so right now we pick up with Titania, Trapster, and Brothers Grimm. And these 3 characters were defeated earlier by Spider-Man with the powers of Cosmic, and now they're on their way over to a nearby prison. But then they're broken free by Graviton, who says, listen, we have the ability to get revenge against Spider-Man, somebody who has beaten us all earlier in Acts of Vengeance. So let's work together to actually bring him down. But before we can do that, we have to meet the person who is hiring us to be able to kill off Spider-Man. But now we have to jump over to Peter Parker. Now, by this point in Marvel Comics, the Daily Bugle was no longer under control by J. Jonah Jameson. It was actually bought out by another character known as Thomas Fireheart, better known as Puma. And I'll explain why later on in this video. But when it comes to JJ, he was able to start up a new company, a new newspaper company. And he tried his best to bring back all the different characters who used to work for him, including Peter Parker. But recently, Peter Parker was actually caught in a Spider-Man outfit. You see, there was another photographer known as Katzenberg, and I really hope I pronounced that last name correctly, who was always trying to get rid of Peter Parker because he believed that he was the better photographer. And so recently he was able to climb onto the sunroof that belonged to Peter Parker in Mary Jane's apartment, where he took pictures of Peter Parker in a Spider-Man outfit, and then told JJ that Peter Parker has never taken actual pictures of Spider-Man. Instead, it was always just Peter Parker in a Spider-Man outfit, which means that Peter has always been lying when it came to his pictures to JJ and also Robbie. Now, when it comes to Peter, he tries his best to give some good excuse to say no, he never lied, but unfortunately, Robbie does not believe him at all and tells Peter that he cannot work here in JJ's new company. And so Peter basically lost his job. Now, like I said earlier, when it came to Graviton, he told rest of the bad guys that they were actually hired by somebody to go after Spider-Man. Well, that person was actually the Chameleon. You see, around this time in Marvel Comics, the Chameleon was trying his best to become the new kingpin of crime of New York. Matter of fact, he was also trying to get rid of Wilson Fisk to make sure the role was only his to have. Now, he was the one who hired the bad guys to come together to go after Spider-Man. But he's also saying, listen, you have one more person who is going to join your team, and that will be Goliath, who was also defeated by Peter Parker earlier in Acts of Vengeance. And so we jump back over to Peter Parker and Mary Jane, and you have the two characters right now at home just minding their business, having some good bonding time, husband and wife, until Peter Parker gets word that the Daily Bugle is once again floating in the middle of the city. And remember, in the first chapter of Acts of Vengeance for Spider-Man, that was how Graviton got Peter Parker's attention. And so for Peter, he knows it has to be Graviton. And so he has no choice but to go ahead and leave to go be Spider-Man. And so the rest of the pages of this chapter is really more of Spider-Man trying to fight against the villains that he was able to be earlier in Acts of Vengeance, but because he had the power of Cosmic, the Enigma Force, he was basically Captain Universe. But now he don't have those powers. And so technically these bad guys have the advantage over him. It's not going to be an easy battle. And really, most of the pages of this battle is Spider-Man getting his butt kicked. Now, there is a moment where it seems like, okay, he might find a way to actually take them down, to save the day. But that small moment is gone very quickly when you have Graviton step in. Now remember, when it comes to Graviton, he has the ability to add gravity to you or remove gravity from you. And so for Spider-Man, he had removed gravity completely. And so you have Peter begin to float straight up into the air, heading to space, and we're left to believe that our hero might possibly die. And so now we are able to enter the final chapter for today's video, really the final chapter for Acts of Vengeance, where we actually see Spider-Man still floating in the air, heading towards space. But luckily for Spider-Man, a plane was just flying by. And so you have Peter go ahead and shoot a web to hold on to the plane. And once he holds on long enough, the effects of Graviton is no longer affecting him. And so gravity is back to normal for him. And he's very excited about the idea of not having to float to space and possibly dying. And so he goes on with his day. Now for the bad guys, their main goal now is to, well, get paid. Except when they go back to the base of the Chameleon, they can't find him. He completely left his base behind. He cleared out. But they do find a note that was left behind. Now on the note, apparently it was Chameleon working with the Kingpin the entire time. And so you have the bad guys say, you know what? If the Kingpin is working with the Chameleon, then we're going to get paid by the Kingpin or we're going to kill him. And then after we kill him, we'll still look for the Chameleon. And so you have all the bad guys head over to the home of the Kingpin, Wilson Fisk. Now Chameleon, he was somewhere nearby and he watches the villains fly off. And that was part of his plan the entire time, to get rid of the Kingpin so that he'll be able to take over all crimes in New York. Now, I kind of want to jump back over to Mary Jane, and here's the reason why. So around this time in Marvel Comics, Harry Osborn and Liz Allen were married to one another, and they had a child. That would be Normie. And so Mary Jane came over to babysit Normie as Harry and Liz go out on a date. But here's the problem though. You see, when it comes to Mary Jane, as she's walking around their apartment, she finds the Green Goblin suit. Now back in X-Men Inferno, there was a tie-in for Spider-Man, and Peter Parker and the Green Goblin had to work together to take down an enemy, which they did. But here's the thing though. Harry told Peter that he would get rid of the Green Goblin suit. But the problem is, the suit is still here. And so you have Mary Jane wonder, does Liz know that her husband still has his Green Goblin suit? And on top of that, she needs to tell Peter about this fast. But now we have to get back over to Peter Parker. Now, when it comes to Peter, he's at the Daily Bugle, where he just found out the Daily Bugle might be completely destroyed down because the structure has been so badly damaged thanks to Graviton that they honestly can't do repairs to the actual building. Now, let's not forget, though, that when it came to the Daily Bugle, around this time in Marvel Comics, it was actually purchased out by Thomas Fireheart. Now, Thomas Fireheart is better known as Puma. Now, when it came to Puma, the only reason why he bought out the Daily Bugle was to help out Spider-Man. You see, there was an earlier story arc where Peter Parker was being blamed for a crime, and Puma believed that Peter Parker was actually guilty, to only find out that Peter Parker is actually innocent. And so he bought out the Daily Bugle to begin the process of building up a better image of Peter Parker to the public. But now we have to jump over to the office of the Kingpin, because as soon as we do that, we see him being attacked by the bad guys from earlier parts of this story. Now for the Kingpin, he has no idea why these guys are here for, but they tell him like, your partner did not pay us, so you better pay us before we kill you and then find your partner. Now for the Kingpin, he has no idea what they are talking about. He's like, partner? I am not working with anybody at all. Like, have you guys literally lost y'all's mind? But they're not listening, and they try to attack him. Now, luckily for the Kingpin, Spider-Man arrives just in time to save him. Now, here's the thing, our bad guys are very surprised to see Spider-Man. Now, Peter knew to make sure to take out Graviton first before going after the rest of the villains. Because really, when it comes to Graviton, he's really only actual challenge for Peter Parker. The rest of them, he can take out very easily, which he actually does. And so once he's able to remove Graviton, the battle does last for a few pages, but it's really more Peter Parker just being the amazing Spider-Man and being able to take down all these guys so easily. And so for Peter, the day is saved and he can move on with his life. Now, the last page of this book really shows that Chameleon's still very happy about the idea of Peter Parker saving the life of the Kingpin. And here is the reason why. Because now word is out there that the Kingpin private tower was attacked by a group of villains, and Spider-Man had to come in to protect him and save his butt against those villains. And so that begins the process of the Kingpin kind of losing his control over crime in New York and giving the Chameleon a chance to move up the ladder into the role of the Kingpin. But this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.